Hey everybody, today we're gonna talk about the February recap. Okay, so for February, my picks were based on Black History Month, which is celebrated in the US, and I decided to pick books that would celebrate the diversity within Black stories. So I picked different African American authors, Afro Latino, or just simply their stories, and these are the books that I selected. So the first one that I read is actually a guide for teachers and parents, and this one is called Raising Confident Black Kids. And this book is really important because it's for everybody who is, and I mean everybody, who is in contact with African American, Afro Latino, Black children, and how we can help them in their journey through life. And so the teachers or people who work with children can take everybody's experiences in the way they socialize, they engage, they teach. So I think it is really important because it tells you a bit of history of the community. It gives you certain specific topics that they can relate to that maybe we can't, but it is important for us to understand. Whatever experience each and every one of us have, it's gonna be different, and it's important for us to be able to inform ourselves on what each and every one of us life situation, experience, culture is, so we can all actually understand each other a bit better. So I think this is a really important book. I think that it should be required reading so we can go ahead and understand a little bit more and take that into our own profession, whatever that is. So yeah, I think it is a really important book. I really liked it. Again, it's a guide, but it doesn't feel like a guide. It doesn't feel like step 1, step 2, step 3. It's very informative, and then it sort of opens the door for you to do more research, for you to be more aware, be more involved. So I think it is an important book for everyone. So that's a nonfiction book, Raising Confident Black Kids, and I gave it 5 stars. Okay, the next book that I selected is in the genre of memoirs, and this book is called What It Is: Race, Family, and a Thinking Black Men's Blues. The author is Clifford Thompson, and that's important because it is his viewpoint on life as an African American. It tells us stories from his childhood, his adolescence, his adulthood. So I think it is very interesting, different perspective that he has based on his economic and social background. I really liked it. I really like his experiences. I really like his point of view. But the only thing is that about a third of the book really focuses on the 2016 election, interviews with people about the election, how they feel on both sides of the aisle. And I think it took a really big space in the book that perhaps wasn't necessary because we already know so much about it. Although it really showed different sides of the conversation, I still think that it was a big chunk of the book when I really, even though I didn't know anything about Clifford Thompson, I really wanted to know more about his particular experience and not necessarily read the interviews that he was conducting with people and their opinions on the 2016 election. Other than that, that's the only part that I didn't quite like. But other than that, everything else I really love. So this is his very own particular perspective. So if you guys want to go read it, I think it's a good book for you to kind of explore. This is a biography, and I gave it 3 stars. Okay, for some of my picks that I wanted to do this month that was different from the theme of the month is books in Spanish. The next book is from Pablo Andres Wonderlinch Padilla. He's a Guatemalan author, and he wrote La Guerra de los Dioses, El Sacrificio, or The Sacrifice, and it's a series, it's a fantasy series about a little boy who's working on his farm in La Hacienda with his grandmother after his grandfather passed away. And one day when she sends him for a cure for the chickens with a local witch or hechicera, he kind of falls into this fantasy world of gods that want to destroy everything. So he is kind of in the middle of this. This is adventure. It is more like a middle grade book. I really liked it. I really like the fact that it's something different, some that is pure fantasy in Spanish, which we don't get a lot of, and it is told kind of like those great fantasy stories that we're used to in other languages. However, I did feel like it was a bit long, like some of the scenes were repetitive, which is a little bit normal in fantasy. But in this case, I really did feel like it was a bit repetitive, and then our character wasn't moving forward fast enough. But it's still a great book. I would really recommend that if you want to get into a fantasy series that was written in Spanish. And yeah, I do feel like the cover is a little bit misleading because you see these two gods fighting, but most of the story we don't get that, so just be aware of that. Most of the story is this little boy in his environment with his friends, with the school bully, what's going on with the grandma and the farm, and then this fantasy element is a little bit more in the background. But because it is a series, I'm sure the next couple of books are gonna be even bigger. I'm not sure if I'm gonna continue with this series. Maybe I will. I have a couple of series that I have to finish, but I still like that I started this one, that it is something different, that it was in Spanish. And this is Guerra de los Dioses, El Sacrificio, and I gave it 3 stars. Okay, for my next February book, I actually picked another children's book, middle grade. The character is in middle grade, but I think the story is a little bit more for children. And this is called El Cielo es Mío. It's a very short audiobook that is available on Everand. It just came out in late January. It's by Jose Peña Coto, and this tells the story of a 14-year-old boy who wants to go into space and how he takes matters into his own hands, and he actually builds his own spaceship or a spacecraft, and he actually gets to go to space. So I think it is a cute book. It is a good book. It is a STEM book. It is a child imagination book. It's about reaching for your dreams and getting them. So I think it's a fun book for the family to listen together. So this is El Cielo es Mío, and I gave it 3 stars. Okay, the next book that I read, also with the theme of the month, was We Are a Haunting by Tyreek White. And first of all, let me just tell you that this book was written beautifully. I love the way it's written. I feel that it's a little lyrical, not a lot, because I know a lot of people don't like it, but it's just the perfect amount of lyricism and description and beauty. It is telling the story of this man who lives in New York, and it's also telling the story of his mother. That connection between them, she has passed away and now they can talk to each other. So I think that's why it's called We Are a Haunting. So they can speak to each other even though she has already passed away. She actually had the same gift when she lived, and now that she has passed, he has the gift to talk to her. And they kind of tell stories about growing up, about her. He is an ambitious young man. He's interning at an art gallery. So it is important for him to develop in his profession, but also keep in mind where he's from, what his mother had to go through, the experiences of living as a Black man in New York. So it is very beautiful. There were parts where I felt like I couldn't, if I get distracted easily, I couldn't tell who was telling the story until characters kind of appeared, so I could tell, oh, okay, this is the mom's story or this is his story. It kind of blends in. And then it gives you certain dates, so the dates should give you a clue of where you're at, but it felt a little confusing for me in particular. I had a cold when I was reading this book, so I think that really affected the way I was kind of listening to it. I got a little bit lost at certain parts, but even with me being lost, or I could pick it up and I could just see how beautifully it was written, how the stories were being told. It did leave me wanting to know what was going on with the characters. I never once wanted to DNF it or didn't care about the characters. I always wanted to know what happened to them, even to his mom. So yeah, I think it's a beautiful story. I think it's again another point of view that is important for us to read, to know about. And I think again it's beautifully written. I think that's the part that I love the most, the way it's written. So that was We Are a Haunting, and I gave it 4 stars. Okay, the next book that I read was Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. And this book had me on a chokehold the whole time. So we are following Kambili and her brother and their story with their family. Her father is very religious. He is the result of colonization, of religious conversion. He's very into his faith. He's very into God, into the Bible, into following the rules very strictly. He's a very strict man when it comes to religion. Everything that seems out of the ordinary when it comes to the religion. For example, his father, they're from Nigeria. So sorry about that. The power just went off. I don't know what's going on, so maybe it'll come back in a minute. So they're from Nigeria, and her father is again very strict. Her grandfather wasn't converted, so he's still following his own spiritual beliefs within the community where they live. And Cambili's dad thinks that all of that is heresy, that she and her brother should not spend time with the grandfather. And he does allow the aunt to spend time with them as long as they don't take the kids to the grandfather or that they are highly supervised. However, it's such a contradictory story because he's very religious. However, he is verbally and mentally abusive to his wife and his children. And then in the community where the aunt lives, there's a priest who spends a lot of time with Kambili. And I would consider, although they never cross the line, I would consider that inappropriate time that they're spending together. Even Kambili developing a crush and dreaming maybe going or running away with him, and he allows this to happen, or this fantasy to happen. And I found it incredibly contradictory that a man who was so, or who is so strict when it came to his religion, would still be so abusive to his family, which makes zero sense to me. And then also in the town, there's kind of turmoil because there's been a coup and the military has taken over the country. So the father also writes for a paper, writes political articles where they don't want the military to take over. And so there's that going on. We also see the military going into homes and kind of ransacking the home. And we see a lot of different things going on in Nigeria, but at the depths of the story, it is this young woman's coming of age story, what it is to be religious, what it is to be spiritual, what it is to be Nigerian, what it is to be in a community where you are so, where other cultures have come in and kind of imposed their beliefs. Also within your own culture, how they're fighting that, but maybe not in the best of ways. So it is a very complex story of Kambili, of her mother, and of her brother. Something horrible does happen that results in the family kind of going through something really bad. The thing that I came away with most is, I know the mother was a victim of the father. However, she also did nothing to protect her children. So that really bothered me. So again, both of the parents kind of let them be. And then also the aunt kind of let them have an inappropriate, or let the daughter have an inappropriate relationship with an older man. So I think that it is very confusing for Kambili to have all of those adults not showing her the appropriate way of being a child and being loved and being cared for. So it is a very complex story. It is filled with, as you can see, it is filled with anecdotes and things that happen to Kambili that are very harsh to listen to. But I think, again, it's an important read. It is a different point of view that I do consider super important to listen to. And the story, even though it goes through a lot of really harsh things, I think that it's really well written. It's really carefully written. It's a really good story, and we just want to root for Kambili and her brother as much as we can. So anyways, that was Purple Hibiscus, and I gave it 5 stars. Okay, so the next one is We Need New Names by No Violet Bulawayo. And this one is from a girl from Zimbabwe called Darling. And it's, again, her life in Zimbabwe, her regular life in Zimbabwe, what she goes through, how life is difficult there, and how at some point she will have to move to the US with her cousins, and how life is also difficult there, but in a different way. So that's what I liked about this book. I like the fact that they expose two different way of living. However, it doesn't necessarily tell you that one is better than the other. It shows you the difficulties of both ways of living, which is a little bit sad for Darling, because where do you actually fit in? Are you actually happy and thriving? I didn't like a lot how this book was written. It's not necessarily for me, and it's not necessarily that it's written bad. It is well written. However, the way it is told, it is very dry. It's very like clear cut, dry. Not a lot of lyricism. Not a lot of like playing with words. And it tells you what's happening more than showing you what's happening. So if you like that type of writing, this is the perfect book for you. If it's very dry, it's very cut, it's very straight to the point of what it's going on in the story. I do like my books a little bit more lyrical, a little bit more flowery, a little bit more introspection. And this one seems so cut and dry that it kind of lost me. And it also felt like they were screaming a lot, like the main character's mom or aunt. I can't remember who she's with all the time, but it felt like she was always screaming at them, or they were kind of being reprimanded, Darling and the other kids around. So it felt like a hectic household. That's how it felt to me. Again, I like knowing the stories of these characters, but that book, the way it's written is not particularly for me. It didn't feel like the way that I said that she was always like screaming or reprimanding, or it didn't feel like a character choice. It felt more like a result of what I was saying of being so cut and dry. So again, that was We Need New Names, and I gave it 3 stars. The next book that also had me on a chokehold is called Homebodies. And this is the story of a woman who is a writer, and she writes beauty articles, different things about the beauty industry. And one day they fire her and hire someone else who is African American, letting us to believe that there's only space for one African American in that particular space where she's at, and she's simply being replaced. So we're asking ourselves, like, why is it only one space? Why are all these women have to fight for that same space? Is the woman who just got hired gonna get fired also and replaced with someone else? And then what is gonna happen to them? Do they have space somewhere else for them? So that is the big question. Why is it that one needs to be replaced with the other? Why can't they just both work there? And how is it that the industry is letting that happen? And why? It's also a sapphic story. So she decides to go home after a while, after kind of spending her severance money on just fast food takeout and moping around in her apartment. She gets into a fight with her girlfriend, and she decides to go home. And when she goes home, she is confronted with this image of her family and friends and neighborhood people that she knows, and what they're doing, how life is going, and how they expected her to be like this big thing in New York, this big writer in New York, and how she feels like a failure because she got fired. However, she didn't get fired because she did anything wrong. Also, she writes the whole synopsis of the story is that she writes a memo, kind of, and tell-all memo of what happened, and sends it to people, and she doesn't get any response. So she thinks she just literally blew up her career, like no one's gonna hire her anymore, because she kind of exposed things at her previous company, and then no one's gonna trust her or hire her. And so she really feels like down in the dumps. So she goes home and she reconnects with her best friend and her daughter and her grandma and her dad and his new family, which she doesn't feel a part of, and with an ex-girlfriend. So that kind of where trouble kind of leads a little bit. I really like this book because I think it tells you about, although the whole premise is that it's about the writers in the beauty industry, and this memo that kind of blows up, which is a big part and it is important. I feel like that's the beginning and the end of the book. The middle part is really where the meat of the story is. Like Who are you if you are not your job? Who are you when you go home and you have these big dreams? Who are you to your core? Is that what's valuable? What is gonna bring value to your life? Do you just go with what's comfortable? Do you go with what's difficult? Do you create new path for yourself? And I think a lot of people in their 20s, 30s go through that, where life is just kind of shifting. And since we're children, we are told that if you go to school, if you study this, you'll get a job and you're set. And you're not gonna be set. Life is gonna throw a million things at you. No one ever tells you that. No one tells you how to be resilient. When we are children, we wanna be as steady as possible. And although that's an amazing way of viewing childhood and keeping our children steady, there's also, we have to prepare them for when things don't go right, when things don't go as they should. So I think it is very important for her to kind of figure out what she's gonna do now that things are kind of blowing up around her. So that was Homebodies, and I gave that one 4 stars. The next book that I read is from my 2023 TBR jar, and that was Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. And I gotta say, the only audiobook that I was able to get, or the only copy of an audiobook I was able to get, was in Spanish. So I was like, yeah, that's fine. However, it's in Spanish from Spain, and it's a bit different from the Spanish that I speak. I'm in Mexico. Although most of our words are the same, there are a couple of words that are different. The accent is different. The rhythm is different. And although that didn't affect my enjoyment of the book, I do think it distracted me a lot. And also, although it's a good book and I would recommend, and I'm gonna say it already, I gave it 3 stars. The problem with me in that book is that it's children's middle grade, and then there's a lot of tropes that we already know of. There's the chosen one trope, the I'm not like other girls trope, the magical school trope, the games style Hunger Games trope. So I feel like it's filled with tropes and not a lot of actual new things, which, if you love all those tropes and you love middle grade, this might be like a gem for you, because it might be like, whoa, it has everything. For me, I feel like I really want my books to be different every time. I think that's why I also don't like romance. I always go back to romance, but because a lot of the tropes are the same and they do the same things and they have the same problems, for me is not enjoyable when it comes to a book. I really want my books to be incredibly different one from the other. To have a couple of things that are similar, fine, but I do want them to be very different. Also, I started thinking that when I read The Hunger Games, that was the first like dystopian book, and then everything else that came out, I never really got into it. I never really liked it because it felt repetitive. So if you've never read any of this, or you have a kid that's never read any of this and you want to give them Nevermore, they might super love it and enjoy it. I know it's a very beloved series. For me, it felt like more of the same, so I couldn't enjoy it. And also, I'm not the target audience. I'm not in middle grade. And yeah, so it wasn't great for me. So that's why I gave it 3 stars, because I can appreciate everything that he was trying to do. It's just definitely not for me. So that was Evermore. So I still have a little bit of time before February is over. Today is actually the 27th. So I have 2 more days. And yesterday, when I finished Evermore, I started Vanity and Vampires. And this is from the series of Masters and Manners, which is a sort of retelling. The first one is kind of a retelling of Pride and Prejudice, but with a guy who's investigating like paranormal and unnaturals, they call them, people. And she is the daughter of, her name is Hannah, and she's the daughter of a physician, a doctor, who actually investigates also the paranormal or unnatural people. So the first one, like I said, it's kind of like a Pride and Prejudice retelling, but it kind of goes off the rails from there in the best way possible, because every book is like a new monster, and the title already tells you that. So this is Vanity and Vampires. I don't want to tell you where we're at in the story, because as you can tell, if it's a Pride and Prejudice story, you know what's going to happen with the 2 main characters. I don't want to tell you where we are with them, because it is a series and I'm on book 4, but I'm really enjoying it. Obviously, the monsters are vampires. I already know the minimum. I'm gonna give it a 3 stars because I really like this series. It's a fun, campy book that you can listen to while you're doing something else. I think it would be an awesome TV series, and it's just fun. It's something fun. If you're a fan like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Doctor Who, all those episodic shows that have like different monsters in them each episode, I think you would be a fan of Manners and Monster series. So again, I'm there at book 4, which is Vanity and Vampires, and I'm gonna give this one 3 stars. And the last book that I'm gonna start reading, if I finish before the end of the month, before this goes up, and I'm able to tell you an update, I'll insert it right here. But it is The City We Became by N.K. Jameson. And yeah, I'm gonna start that book. I'm really interested in it. But it is The City We Became by N.K. Jameson. And yeah, I'm gonna start that book. I'm really interested in it. I know that it's about cities who have kind of, I don't know if it's about cities who have kind of have a conscience, or about people who can kind of consciously become a complete city. And it's kind of a superhero power thing. So yeah, I'm just excited to read again something super different. And I'm gonna add it to my monthly reads. Hopefully I can finish it. I already downloaded. The book looks really big. I keep looking at it. The book looks really big, but the audiobook's only like 5 hours, so I hope they're not fooling me. But I think we can get through it like super fast. So I'm gonna finish today Vanity and Vampires, and then I'm gonna start this one. However, because the power just went off, I don't know if my battery is gonna last that long. So hopefully, I already had 60% before I started filming this video, so hopefully I'll be able to do that. If not, I'll keep you updated. So yeah, that is my February recap. I hope that it gives you some ideas of what you can read when it comes to this particular theme for Black History Month. And yeah, I hope you enjoy. Let me know if you have read any of the books that I have suggested, and let me know what you think. If you think differently, go ahead and put it on the comments. Say hi. Any recommendations for other books that I can read within this theme, or books in Spanish, that would be amazing. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and to hit that bell so you can get notified whenever I upload a book. I upload Mondays and Fridays in English and Wednesdays in Spanish. You also have all my social media down there in the description, so go ahead and follow me over there. And yeah, that's it. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. Just keep reading and keep blooming. Bye.